It was their 15th wedding anniversary. Emma was sitting at the dining table at 9:20 in the evening. The children were upstairs, asleep. Thomas was, allegedly, on a Eurostar back from Paris. She had a glass of red wine in front of her, half drunk. She had logged into the joint bank account because she had been planning, in a small private way, to look at how much they had saved for the family trip to Cornwall in August. The trip she would, 10 weeks later, take alone with the children. The transaction that ended the marriage was line 42 on the statement. A 2-night booking at the Goring Hotel, Belgravia. 3 weekends earlier. The weekend Thomas had been, allegedly, in Frankfurt on an audit.
£1,216. The exact cost of 2 nights in a junior suite. Plus dinner. Plus a bottle of champagne.
Emma was 43. A part-time architect at a small practice in Bristol. 3 children, Lucy, 12. Henry, 10. Imogen, 6. A Georgian terrace on a leafy street in Clifton, an Audi estate in the Residence Bay outside, a husband who had, by every measurable standard, been the kind of partner her 30-something single friends had said, with a particular kind of polite envy at her wedding, that they hoped to find one day. Thomas was 47. A senior partner in a financial services firm in central Bristol. 6'2", prematurely silver-haired, the kind of man who looked good in a jumper and looked good in a suit and never, in the 18 years they had been together, looked anything other than entirely sure of himself. On the evening of their 15th anniversary, Thomas had texted Emma at 6 p.m. to say his train had been delayed by signal failure outside Lille. He would not be home until 11. He was sorry. He had asked her, in the way he always did, whether she was all right. Emma had said she was all right. She had told him to be safe. She had set down the phone, opened her laptop, logged into the joint bank account, and inside 90 seconds her marriage had been redefined backwards across 3 weekends she had remembered as ordinary.
I think the worst part, and I have thought about this often, since, was that I knew before I read line 42. I knew before I scrolled to it. There had been a feeling in my chest, all evening, that I had assumed was the wine. It was not the wine.
A 2024 study by the Centre for Family Research at Cambridge University, examining the financial trails left by extramarital affairs, identified a phenomenon the authors named the joint account paradox. In 73% of cases studied, the betrayed partner had access, and full visibility, to the financial records that contained evidence of the affair, often for many months before discovery. The reason for the delay was almost never a lack of access. It was, the authors noted, the absence of a question. The records were transparent. The reason to read them was not. The second finding is more uncomfortable. In 61% of the cases studied, the discovery did not come from suspicion. It came from a routine task, checking a balance before a holiday, verifying a direct debit, looking up the cost of school fees, planning a birthday gift. The discovery, in other words, came not from looking for something. It came from looking at something else and finding, in the corner of the eye, the thing that had been there the whole time. Emma had not been looking for anything. She had been planning a holiday. Thomas and Emma had met in 2008 at a friend's housewarming in Clifton. Emma had been 30, recently qualified, working at her first practice. Thomas had been 34, a junior partner at the firm he was now senior at. He had asked her, in the precise vowels of a man who had been to a school where vowels were taught, whether she had drawn the conversion of the kitchen they were standing in. She had not. She had said so. He had laughed at his own assumption with what she had taken to be charm. They were married in 2011 at a country hotel outside Bath. 130 guests. A string quartet. A speech from Thomas's older brother, James, that referred to Emma as the only woman with the patience for him, a line that landed, at the time, as affection, and that Emma would remember, 14 years later, with a different inflection. Lucy came in 2013. Henry in 2015. Imogen, the unplanned addition, in 2019. The marriage, in Emma's account, was steady in the way her parents' marriage had been steady. There were rituals. Friday night supper after the children were asleep. Saturday morning runs together when the weather permitted. A foreign holiday once a year. An anniversary dinner at the same restaurant in Clifton, Bell's Diner, every 15th of April, where they had eaten on their first date. On the 15th of April this year, Emma had cancelled the booking at 6:15 after Thomas had texted to say he would be late. She had told the maître d', whose name was Andrew and who had served them every anniversary for 14 years, that she was sorry that her husband had been delayed in Paris. Andrew had said the table would be there next year. He had said, "Give him our best." Thomas had not been delayed in Paris. Thomas had been, as Emma would establish over the following 10 days, in a junior suite at the Goring Hotel in Belgravia, where he had been on the weekend of the 17th of March. The weekend he had told Emma he was conducting an audit at a client's headquarters in Frankfurt. He had been in Belgravia with a woman whose name Emma did not yet know. Emma did not call Thomas after she found line 42. She did not text him. She did not pour another glass of wine. She did 3 things, in the following order, between 9:21 and 11 p.m. on the 15th of April. First, she opened a new browser tab and signed up for a free trial of an online accounting tool. She uploaded the last 12 months of joint account statements and the last 12 months of the credit card statement she shared with Thomas, and she ran a search, by date, by merchant category, by amount. She found 7 hotel charges in the previous 14 months that she could not account for. 3 at the Goring. 2 at the Connaught. 1 at the Charlotte Street Hotel. 1 at a hotel in Edinburgh she had never heard of called the Witchery by the Castle. Total, £9,478. She found 19 restaurant charges in the same period that she could not account for. 12 in central London. 4 in Bath. 3 in Edinburgh. The pattern was consistent. Friday night dinner. Saturday lunch. Sunday breakfast. Always for 2. Always on weekends Thomas had been, allegedly, working. She found 4 jewellery purchases. 2 at Hatton Garden. 2 at a boutique called Astley Clark in Marylebone. None of them had ever been given to her. She wrote it all down. She made a single spreadsheet. She titled it, in the way of a woman who had once submitted a final year dissertation under the pressure of an immovable deadline, Audit. Second, she walked upstairs into Thomas's home office, the small back room he used as a study, and opened the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet, which she had never opened in 15 years of marriage. Inside, in a manila folder labeled Personal Correspondence, MISC, she found a stack of receipts, all of them folded once, all of them dated, all of them clipped together. She took the folder downstairs. She photographed every page on her phone. She put the folder back exactly where it had been. Third, at 10:48 p.m., she walked into the spare bedroom at the front of the house, the one with the king-sized bed and the ensuite, the one they used for guests, and she made the bed up with fresh linen. She placed a pillow and a folded blanket on the armchair beside the bed. She set a small bottle of water on the nightstand. When Thomas walked through the front door at 11:17 p.m., Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, finishing the wine. She looked up. She said, in a voice that she described later as having come from a stranger she had been hiding inside herself for many years.
Happy anniversary. Your bed is made up in the spare room. I would prefer that you did not come into the master bedroom tonight.
Thomas began the question, Emma, what? And Emma raised one hand, palm out, the way she would later raise it to silence a meeting in her practice.
Tomorrow morning. Not tonight.
Emma did not sleep that night. She lay in the king-sized bed she had shared with Thomas for 15 years and she watched, on her phone, the digital clock change minute by minute. At 5:30 a.m. she got up. She made tea. She placed 3 printed sheets of A4 paper on the kitchen table, the audit spreadsheet, at the place Thomas usually Saturday. She placed the folder of photograph receipts beside them. She placed her wedding ring beside both, although she did not yet know whether she had decided that the ring was off, or whether she was using it as a punctuation mark. At 7 a.m. Thomas came downstairs, in the dressing gown he kept for guest accommodations. He sat in his usual chair. He looked at the spreadsheet. He looked at the folder. He looked at the ring. He said, after a long silence, "Emma,
Her name.
Thomas looked at her.
The woman. I want her name.
Thomas told Emma her name. The woman's name was Louise Hartley. She was 38. She worked in compliance at a London law firm Thomas's company occasionally retained. She was unmarried. The relationship had been going on for 2 years and 4 months. Emma had met Louise once. At a Christmas charity gala, the previous December, where Thomas had introduced her as a colleague from another firm we work with. Emma remembered her. Tall. Dark hair. Confident. A particular kind of laugh. Emma asked Thomas 3 further questions. She had written them on the same sheet of paper as the audit, in pen, in the margin.
Has she been in this house?
No.
Have you told her you love her?
Emma.
Have you told her you love her?
Yes.
Are you in love with her?
Thomas did not answer. After a long silence, in which Emma later described herself as having watched a man take 90 seconds to choose which of 2 lies was less unkind, Thomas said,
I don't know.
Emma stood up. She picked up the wedding ring. She walked over to the kitchen window and she dropped it into the small ceramic dish where she kept the keys to the bicycle shed. She told Thomas to be out of the house by Friday. Emma did not collapse that week. She did not cry in front of the children. She did not, despite what her sister later urged her to do, change the locks before Thomas had moved out. She did 3 things. She would remember the week, later, as the most precisely organized week of her life. First, she went to her solicitor, a woman named Margaret Westcott, who had handled the conveyancing on the Clifton house 10 years earlier and whom Emma had not spoken to since. She booked an appointment for the Monday at 9 a.m. She arrived with the audit spreadsheet, the folder of photographed receipts, the past 5 years of joint tax returns, the deeds to the Clifton house, and a 1-page summary of the marriage's financial structure that Margaret later told her was the most coherent document she had ever been handed by a new client. Margaret advised divorce on grounds of adultery, expedited. She explained the financial implications. She explained, in the careful, neutral tones of a woman who had delivered this particular conversation many times, that the audit, in itself, was sufficient to establish a pattern of marital misconduct that would, in a financial settlement, materially advantage Emma's position. Emma asked one question.
How much of what we have, Margaret? Of what we built? Of what is in our names? How much, in the end, is mine?
Margaret answered. Emma wrote the figure down on the back of her appointment card. Second, she went to her firm's finance director, a man named Daniel Okonkwo, who had been her colleague for 11 years, and asked him to walk her through the practice's standard process for transitioning from a part-time to a full-time partnership track. He had told her, with a particular kind of warmth, that they had been waiting 2 years for her to ask. By the Thursday of that week, Emma had been offered a full-time partnership in the practice, contingent on a transition over 6 months. Her future income would, she calculated on the train home, replace 58% of what Thomas had been bringing into the household. She did not need it to replace 100%. The settlement would handle the rest. She had run the numbers. Third, on the Friday morning, before Thomas removed his clothes from the wardrobe, Emma sat with the 3 children at the kitchen table and told them, in language calibrated to each of their ages, that their father was moving out and that they would still see him very often and that this was not their fault and not their problem to solve and that she loved them and that they were entirely safe. Lucy, the oldest, asked one question. Mum, did Dad do something? Emma looked at her oldest daughter for a long moment and she said the only sentence she had rehearsed.
Yes, sweetheart. But it is not your job to know what. It is my job to handle it. And you and Henry and Imogen, your job is just to be 12, and 10, and 6.
Emma did not contact Louise Hartley. She would say, later, that she thought about it. That she had Louise's professional email address, not difficult to find, and that she had drafted, in her head, 3 different messages over 3 different sleepless nights. She did not send any of them. What Emma understood, in a way that surprised her, was that Louise was a peripheral figure in this story. Louise had been told things by Thomas that Louise had been entitled, on the basis of those things, to believe. Whether she had believed them, or had pretended to believe them, was, in Emma's accounting of where her own attention was best spent, Louise's matter to settle with herself. What Emma understood, and what Margaret Westcott, the solicitor, had quietly confirmed, was that Louise had not, as far as the financial records could establish, contributed anything to the affair's costs. The Goring, the Connaught, the jewellery, the dinners. All of it, every penny of £9,478 and considerably more besides, had come out of the joint account that Emma and Thomas had built, over 15 years, from the income of 2 careers. What Thomas had been doing, in the language Emma used when she finally explained it to her sister, was not just having an affair. He had been funding an affair from the household account that paid for his daughter's piano lessons. When Margaret submitted the divorce petition, the audit was Exhibit A. The amount Emma was awarded, after 11 months of negotiation, was, to the pound, the figure Margaret had written on the back of the appointment card on the morning of their first meeting. Thomas did not contest it. 3 weeks after Thomas moved out, Emma received a phone call from a woman she had not spoken to in 11 years. Thomas's cousin, Catherine, 46. A retired nurse who lived in Cardiff. Catherine had been at Emma and Thomas's wedding. Catherine had, in 2014, sent Emma a card on the birth of Henry that had said, simply, "You are doing brilliantly." Catherine and Thomas had, over the previous decade, drifted apart in the way that side branches of a family drifted apart.
Emma. I heard. I am so sorry. I want to tell you something. You can do with it what you wish.
Catherine told Emma that Thomas's father, who had died in 2017, had had 2 long-running affairs during Catherine's childhood. That Thomas's mother had known. That the family had absorbed it as the way Thomas's father was, and that Thomas, as a teenager, had been told by his older brother James that what their father did not affect anyone. Catherine said, "I am not telling you this to excuse him. There is no excuse. I am telling you because I think you deserve to know that the pattern is older than you are." Emma thanked Catherine. She kept the conversation short because she needed it to be short. She put the phone down and sat for 10 minutes at the kitchen table. What Catherine had told her did not, in any way, change Emma's decision. It clarified it. Thomas was not, Emma realized, in the moment of clarity that Catherine had given her, an aberration of his upbringing. He was a continuation of it. Thomas had been the older of 2 boys raised, by parents who had loved them, in a household in which the central premise was that the man's private life and the man's public life could be conducted on entirely separate financial and emotional ledgers, provided he was discreet enough that the public ledger remained intact. Thomas, Emma now understood, had not been having a midlife crisis. He had been, in his own quiet and methodical way, doing what his father had done. What Emma had stopped, when she found line 42, was not an affair. It was a generational arithmetic. The divorce was finalized in February. Emma kept the Clifton house. She kept the Audi. She kept the children, who lived with her on weeknights and saw Thomas every other weekend at the flat he had taken in central Bristol. She made full partner at the practice. Her income, by the autumn, replaced 64% of what Thomas had been earning, which combined with the maintenance payments left her, for the first time in 15 years, financially independent in a way that did not depend on his absence to be calculated. Thomas and Louise did not, in the end, stay together. Louise had found, 6 months after Thomas left the house, that the relationship she had believed she was waiting for did not look the same in the daylight as it had looked in the candlelit rooms of the Goring. She moved firms. She has, as far as Emma knows, not been in a relationship with Thomas since the previous autumn. Emma's relationship with Thomas's family, his mother, his older brother James, his sister-in-law Julia, did not survive the disclosure. She had not asked it to. The children see their grandmother twice a year, at Christmas, and on a single Sunday in summer. The visits are pleasant. They are short. Emma is not part of them. Catherine, Thomas's cousin, has continued to send the children birthday cards every year. The cards are signed simply, Catherine, with love. The children have adjusted in the way children adjust. Lucy, who is now 13, has not asked Emma the question Emma was expecting her to ask. Henry, who is 11, has begun to mention his father more sparingly than he used to and has not been pressed on it. Imogen, who is 7, was the youngest, the one Emma was most worried about and who has turned out, against expectation, to be the one who has spoken about it most easily, the one who has said, more than once, "I think Mum's house is the proper house." Emma does not say she has forgiven Thomas. She does not say she has not. What she says, when asked, which is rarely, because the friends who knew them then mostly do not ask, is that she has built a different life. That her practice is busy. That Cornwall in August was lovely. That Lucy is doing her grade for piano. That Henry is obsessed with the Romans. That Imogen has decided she would like to be a marine biologist or, alternatively, a chef. She does not say that the audit spreadsheet, line 42, and all the rest of it, sits, password protected, in a folder on her laptop labeled April 15th. She does not say that she rereads it once a year, on the morning of the 15th of April, with a cup of tea. She does not need to. If you have been listening to this story, and you have a joint account, or a credit card, or a financial life shared with someone else, this is what Emma would say to you. She would say that the records are not difficult to read. She would say that the records do not lie. She would say that if there is a feeling in your chest that has